National Signing Day has come and gone, but that doesn't mean that the recruiting season ever stops. In fact, it just keeps on going and going and going. Such is the case for the 2023 cycle, with camps starting even in the late winter. We're going to talk about one of those camp series and what the implications are for Auburn in it. Welcome to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here and on our podcast network may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any content. And thank you to members of our booster club like Keldrick Falk who help produce videos like this. Most of you that have been on this channel know that we don't do a ton of recruiting discussion, but we do cover it from time to time, and kind of felt like a space where maybe it was time to mention a little bit of something about it, just to kind of whet your appetite, because I know a lot of you love recruiting, specifically Auburn football recruiting out there. With that, I want to discuss a camp series that has begun in the late winter, which will stretch into the early spring, that's being put on by Under Armour, and what it means for Auburn, some things that we kind of found out from this past weekend, one here in Atlanta, close to where I live actually. What could be the implications for Auburn football? But I want to give you a little bit of a background about the camp series itself first, for those of you that might not be a little bit informed about it. So it's run by Under Armour. It's called the Under Armour Next Football Camp Series. And it's for 2023, 2024, and the 2025 recruiting cycle. All football recruits that fall within those categories are invited. There's also a middle school one that I found out, but we're not going to obviously get too far into that. That's just getting a little ridiculous recruiting at that point. Players will take place in some athletic testing, but also some position-specific skills and one-on-ones over the course of the camp, and most of them, if not all of them, are a single day. Now, there are 6 total camps that are going to be in this series, stretching from late February into March, and those are going to be held in Florida, Georgia, Texas, Ohio, Maryland, and technically California. Here's the funny thing about that. When you look at the map of where these camps are being held, it's listed like a little dot in Arizona, and there's nothing in California. So I'm wondering, because of still restrictions that are out there from the pandemic, that they didn't move the California one a state over to Arizona, where things are a little bit, shall we say, more open. That's just speculation there, but it is still listed as California. Doesn't really have a big implication for Auburn. It's just something I found interesting when I was doing research about it. Now, it kicked off in Miami last week. And obviously, that's not super important for us, because the one that we're going to be talking about, the one that has more implications for Auburn, is the one that was held in Georgia. So this was held at Denmark High School in Alpharetta, Georgia, which is a very populous city outside of Atlanta. I used to live there a long time ago myself, and I can speak to that. But it's also a hotbed for football talent, specifically the state of Georgia and Atlanta as well. Now, there were 200 top prospects from Georgia, but also from neighboring states. And that's the idea behind these camps, is that they put them in big central locations where they can draw in a lot of talent from the surrounding areas. They obviously did the Miami one for the lower and central parts of Florida. Now you've got this one in Georgia, where obviously you're going to see South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, maybe Upper Florida, but especially for importance for Auburn, the state of Alabama. Now, while this does include the 2025 recruiting cycle as well, there are mostly 2023 and 2024 recruiting cycle prospects at this event. So why is this important for Auburn? We've already hit on a couple of things, at least hinted at them. Obviously, it's the proximity thing, right? Auburn obviously has to win the state of Alabama. But it's no joke and no surprise that the state of Georgia is a hotbed in terms of football recruiting for everybody. And Auburn continues to have to put some focus there so that they can continue to be competitive against all their rivals in the region, including Alabama and Georgia. Obviously, there's some close proximity with the Florida camp, but there wasn't a lot of news for Auburn coming out of that. You get into lower Florida, it's almost a different kind of beast, not even the Southeast anymore. So there wasn't a lot of news coming out of that. But I'm sure there were some prospects that have interest in Auburn that participated there. There might even be some prospects out in Texas as well that we might hear a little bit about when it gets out to that point. But these are the 3 right there that are the most important, with Georgia being the most important because of proximity to Alabama and prospects from that state, which will come over to participate there. Now, this may be a little bit obvious, but Auburn coach Bryan Harsin showed up. And I think that's probably a little bit redundant to say. You kind of expect that to happen. But with the whole perception thing that's been going on with Coach Harsin and the shall we say, not necessarily scandal, but issues, whether there was going to be some longevity with him or not. There's very much a need for optics and for him to be doing the right things and being showing up at the right places. Now, he's a football-minded guy. He's going to show up to recruiting events if he has the availability to do so. But he's also made it apparent that he's going to try to spend more time being at things that you expect the head coach to be at. The night before, he was at Tennessee for the Auburn men's basketball game versus Tennessee. Unfortunately, it was a loss, but being there with the athletic director was a good show of faith, and it was a quick drive for him to go down and take part in this event. Now, you may say, well, of course he's going to show up, Kyle, because here's the other thing. His son, Davis Harsin, was there as well participating. Well, it makes sense, right? You'd show up if your son's there, but obviously he's going to be there because he's recruiting a lot of these guys as well and wants to see a few of them. Now, Davis Harsin is participating as a quarterback at Auburn High School in our backyard, and he's for the 2024 class, so he's probably not the most important prospect there for Auburn right now, but of course, any chance you get to see your son and whether you can bring him into the fold potentially is obviously an opportunity that you take. More on to prospects that we don't have as much familiarity with, and these are some of the ones that I think that you should be paying attention to yourself, and you'll probably hear other sites as well echoing this. One of those being Jeremiah Cobb. He's a top-rated running back for the 2023 cycle out of the state of Alabama. He's a 5'11", 190-pounder, and he's from Montgomery Catholic, just a stone's throw from Auburn, Alabama. Most people consider him to be a speed back. Now, a lot of speculation is going to change once this next season takes place and is over with, especially because Tank Bigsby, who's coming back for another year, I suspect will likely be gone after this year. And how Auburn transitions in terms of what types of back and type their running game is going to be, it will be interesting to watch. Jarquez Hunter seems to be the guy that'll kind of take the lead. He's a speed back himself, so it would be an interesting thing to see if they bring in another speed guy to kind of learn and grow behind him to get him ready for the future. And obviously, we talk a lot about taking care of your backyard, your home court, so to speak, in the state of Alabama and those close proximity cities, with Montgomery being one of those. You definitely want to take advantage of that if you've got a very talented prospect there. Bring them home to Auburn. Let's move over to defense and talk about a prospect there at the edge rusher position, Keldrick Falk. He's a highly rated recruit by a lot of different media sites out there. He's listed at 6'5", 240 pounds for the 2023 class. He's from Highland Home, Alabama. Now, just like Jeremiah Cobb, Keldrick Falk is also listed currently as being favored for Auburn. It's very early in the process, so I wouldn't put any stock in that right now, but both of these guys seem to be leaning towards Auburn. With a lot of Auburn's talent at the edge rush or just the defensive line position returning, and now after this year probably going away, this leaves an opportunity for a guy like Keldrick to get some playing time even early, which would make sense why, being an Alabama guy, you might see him decide to stick with the Tigers. Now, another name that I'm not necessarily interested in terms of Auburn getting him, I hope they do, but I just don't think it's going to happen, is Hunter Osborne, the defensive lineman who's favored to go to Alabama at this point. He was also there with Falk at this camp, and while I don't know if they have a personal relationship or anything like that, you see guys, especially position-wise, develop these relationships that they carry over throughout their recruiting process, and they sometimes can influence each other. So my hope is that Hunter Osborne, who seems pretty solid with the Crimson Tide right now, won't influence guys like Keldrick Falk to come over to Alabama. Maybe we can do it the opposite way, but just another name to keep your eye on, just to kind of watch how the whole recruiting cycle unfolds in Alabama with these guys participating at different camps together. So those are some of the things that stuck out to me from the news coming out of the Georgia version of the Under Armour Next Series camp. I want to know from you now what you thought about some of the things that you heard, that you saw from this, and what you're thinking about for the next recruiting cycle for 2023. Let me know down there in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this type of content, please do help support it by smashing that like button. If you want more from us, be sure to subscribe, along with hitting that notification bell so you never miss an upload or a live stream. There's other ways to help support our content listed in the description below, such as becoming a member of the E2C Network Booster Club or hitting the join button here to become a channel member. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.